everybody. Welcome to another episode of From Boxes to Butterflies. It's great seeing everybody that's here. I hope you guys really get into the comments because this is going to be an awesome conversation today. Before I get into it, I want to touch on a couple of other things for those who know about my book that's out, Search for the Armor of God. The paperback version is now on the way. So I'm waiting excitedly for the proof copy. And if all goes well, then by the end of the month, next week, it will be available as a paperback. So stay tuned for that. And then a lot of you've probably seen some of my posts over this past week now. I basically started a movement. The movement is Move Beyond Boxes and Shine. I got a little bit of boost on this from one of my besties, CJ, Dr. Constance Leland, who's like, you need to get the movement going. So it is now underway. This is where I talk about how we need to stop with the boxes. Boxes are really only used to segregate us and control in some ways. And so many people, I know you get stuck in a box, you don't have that control. So this is my chance to say, you can take control back. That's what this whole thing is about. When we move beyond the boxes, we're letting our fears go. We're letting our past go. We're living in the present. And when you're in the present, the future's wide open. And I speak on this. I do this as a speaker, as a coach, as a business consultant. So I just wanted to kind of update you on that because that's been my post focus the last few days, and I've seen an awful lot of people have been reading and engaging, and I love it. And I see so many people here already, and I have a feeling with Tabitha and Valerie and Kristen, I'm sure a lot of you are excited for who's about to join me on the stage. So let me give you a little bit of background on today's guest. Catherine Chadwick. She grew up in the Finger Lakes region of upstate New York, where she spent much of her early childhood living on a working farm, where she got close to Mother Nature and the outdoors. I can relate to this one. She only applied to one college. In her case, she went to Alfred University, worked her way through college, and got a Bachelor's of Science from Alfred, which was the first ranked nursing college in New York at that time. And it wasn't long before she was head nurse of a small ICU at 23. She's had the privilege of growing up with her two children, has a grandmother now of 3. And during all that time, she's had the opportunity to continuously be creative and resourceful. And you will see that because she's founded You've Got Nurse, a wellness education and management company, the Sunshine Quotient, which she developed as a mindfulness and breathing technique and a teaching tool, the Art of Self-Craftsmanship, where she teaches mental fitness, training, mind, diet, basics of mind-body connection and how to use it, all the culmination of Catherine's education experience and the incorporation of her studies in neuroscience, metacognition, and epigenetics. And some of the other interesting thing is she holds a 3rd-degree black belt in Washin-Ryu Karate and supports the Hide Ochaya Foundation, as well as the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen, and the Jesse Norman School of Performing Arts, to name a few. Here is somebody who has so much that she's done and has so much to offer. I want you to welcome Catherine.
Susanna, thank you so much for having me here. Isn't it so fun? There's so much to talk about and so much more to do.
And that's how these things go, is conversations that just kind of go all over the place. And that's what I love about it. And I'm so glad that you're here. It's been, I've been watching you as you came into the Hounds, and it took a while, but now we finally get to have a chat. It's just a bit more public than normal.
Well, you know, when a couple of lifelong learners get together, there's always a lot to talk about, right? And congratulations on your book coming into paperback and all of the progress that you're making. And I love the movement that you're started. And of course, I'm delighted to be here as, you know, the creator of the sunshine quotient, right? And so that's a term that refers to lighting gradients in photography and radiology. And I've applied it to people because we are light beings. We radiate light and information constantly, and we receive that. We're body, mind, spirit connections. We're three-dimensional. So let's learn the rules of the game. And that's what I refer to it. So I love teaching people the basics of that, and also a little bit of basic anatomy and physiology. When you take in that deep breath in through the nose, you're stimulating your vagus nerve, and that's connected to just about every organ in your body. And it also, when you take that deep breath, it engages the parasympathetic nervous system of your body, the calming side of your nervous system. So having a wonderful relationship with your breath is really a wonderful place to be.
Well, it's really good if you can do it without falling asleep. That's always been my problem with meditation. I think I'm too tired when I start going, I should do this more often.
So, you know, I encourage people to actually put on their calendar, put a little alarm on their phone, you know, 4 or 5 times a day. It only takes a minute or two at a time, to develop the habit of engaging with the breath work. And what I love about the sunshine quotient is that it's an age-old concept of visualizing, breathing in the light. And it's hard to go to sleep when you feel like you're glowing from the inside out, right? And so
and I did do a it's called vipassana for a meditation. And let's just say the first time we did the actual vipassana, it was interesting, to say the least. I mean, on the one hand, you're like, can we go any faster through the body, please?
There are so many different types of meditation and mindfulness practices that, oh my goodness, you know, and it's just so easy to do a walking mindfulness, just coming into the present moment, because that's where our power is, right? You know, being in the present moment. And so the more present we can be, the more often we can be present. That's a fabulous place to live from.
Well, and you talk nature, and that to me is, over the past year, I have a lot of posts on a place called Duinbrook, which is what I call the forest that's right by me. And that's a place where you talk about walking meditation. To me, that's what it is. When I go into the forest, after 5 encounters with an owl, who I've now named Athena, that's what happens when you go into the forest. And instead of just looking at the ground, walking the trail, you're like, where is she? When is she going to show up? When is she going to fly by? Because I've seen her fly on 2 separate occasions, including the first one where she almost took my head off. But but it's like, yeah, it's just nature. And you talk about nature. So what I'd love to start with is a little bit more about you and kind of what got you from the farm to where you are now.
It's been a progression, right? Yeah. I actually very much appreciated living on the farm because I did spend a lot of time outside. My favorite thing to do on the farm, my father had put together a huge, huge dirt pile for me. And my favorite toy growing up was a digger. And I would make villages all around this what was to me a big mountain, right, of dirt, right? And I would go from village to village, and I had all these little cars and trucks, but it was making villages and bringing all of these people together, and it was a fascinating way to incorporate basic learnings as a kid growing up, and also being exposed to the natural cycles of the outdoor, and growing a garden and working in a garden. And I think that gave me a huge understanding of
Right.
that everything has a cycle. Everything is energy. I didn't understand quantum physics and all of that growing up, obviously, but when you're in tune with the wind and the direction of the sun and all of these things, it does make a big difference in how you move through life. And I left the farm because my father sold it when I was 8 years old, and we moved to one lake to the west. We went over to Cuca Lake, and Tom worked in the grower relations department because he knew the vineyards. And so I spent much time in the Finger Lakes growing up. I didn't even tell anybody that I was applying to college. Pardon me. And the acceptance letter comes home, and my father says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going." And it was work study, and I also worked extra as a nurse's aide at a local hospital, so I could understand basic skills, and I really understood hospital politics and a lot of the basic skills, which is the reason that I ended up in the position that I did at the age of 23. That was a short-lived position in that my real education started, I believe, in my early 20s, because by the time I was 25, I was in a hip to breast back brace after a major lumbar crumble. I had bent over one day to pick up a piece of paper from the floor, and I could not stand up. My whole lower lumbar back had crumbled, and I had a marvelous repair at the Mayo Clinic. And I'm back in Florida, sleeping on a friend's couch. I've lost everything. I haven't been able to work. And my prescription is to wear this brace and walk at least 1 mile a day for a year. And I'm like, okay, this is not going to be my life. I have 2 bikinis. I have 2 back braces. I didn't care what I looked like. I was at that beach every day. It didn't matter what the weather was. I got up to 7 or 8 miles a day, and I'm like, wow, something is way off here, because I could see where people coming into the unit had not been taking very good care of themselves for the most part. And here I am in the same boat. I've been running myself right into the ground, working way too many hours in a position I was not, even though I was very athletic and in fabulous shape. Everything was too heavy. The people, the equipment, everything. And I'm not the only one with this problem. Mm-hmm. And so I started listening to Wayne Dyer and Eckhart Tolle on cassette tapes. And like, okay. Now I'm beginning to get it. And I started studying, more body-mind connection, more body-mind-spirit connection. And I've been studying ever since. In fact, I study all the time, something, right? And because I want to improve my communication and how I can teach it, I like to take as much information as I can and boil it down into actionable steps that people can actually use, right? And not have to spend all the time. But I do it because I love it. And I'm actually now enrolled in Quantum University in a master's to PhD program in integrative medicine. And I believe that there's so much room for exposure and education in every arena of our lives, basically, right? Because many people, including myself, had not been programmed or learned much about what I call the rules of the game, how we really operate. We're part of the universal energy. We're all part of what I call the universal soup. And, we're breathing in this universal energy. So let's learn how to use it. And so I just love it all. I think it's fascinating. And it's a beautiful place to live from, when you can understand about being present, about a little bit how you operate and what you can do to really support yourself. And that's what led me to the Ultimate Mind Diet. If you Google Mind Diet, you'll in the search, a lot of nutritional information will come up, and that's fabulous. But that's not what runs the show. What runs the show is your thoughts, how you talk to yourself, right? The thoughts you choose to entertain. Because we don't have control over everything that floats in, but we do have control over what we choose to work with and what we say, okay, not today. You can just keep going, right? So,
Exactly.
yeah. And so I think it's important to know how we operate, and because, oh my gosh, all of this is such a gift.
Well, and I think that's where a lot of people are missing out. They're stuck with their brain. They're stuck with they're just going the wrong thoughts. I'll for me, I view it as the boxes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because when we get stuck in that box, that's where we lose control in so many ways.
Yeah.
And the real control is whoever we've given it to outside of us, or it's our fear. And this is where I look at women and imposter syndrome, because you're letting your fear run the show and not paying attention to where you've been in that path to where you are, to understand that you're not ready for the job you're in now. You're ready to be 2 or 3 steps down the road. You just aren't accepting it. And that's because of like you said, it's those thoughts. What are the thoughts that you're letting entertain?
I love that you talk about boxes and labels, because I think that is a good way. It's a good analogy, right? Because we are judgmental. We're programmed to be judgmental. We see somebody and we immediately make a judgment call as to who they are. And quite often it's because of what they look like. And so, and how crazy is that, right? Because labels are useful in descriptives, as far as wanting to give somebody directions, wanting to teach something to somebody. They're reference points, but labels are also destructive, because they are limiting, and they do invite even more judgment, I think. And there's some fabulous research out there on the what's the word I want? It's going back to the point that labels are destructive,
Right.
when used improperly, right?
Well, and that's why when I talk about these boxes, people, it's not always just how you look. It's what somebody learns about you. That little piece, and that's all it is. It's a little piece of information about you. And that little piece is what they use to say, this is where you belong. This is the box. You belong with these people.
Yeah.
Those are your people. And you sit there and go, that's not my people. That's not where I belong. And if you really look at the box, everybody that's in there, not only are they unique and different and diverse, they are as diverse left to right as the rest of the country. So it doesn't matter what the box is. It doesn't matter what label you put on it. Neurodiverse, LGBT, a racial thing. It doesn't matter. And what happens too is people, they cherry pick the example. That's the worst part of it. They cherry pick an example to fit the narrative that they want those people to be viewed as.
Well, and the other thing that I think fits in there too is people do what they know. And the research shows that we think gosh, anywhere between 18,000 and 70,000 thoughts in one day. And the studies are pretty much in agreement that about 90% of those thoughts are the same as the day before and the day before and the day before and last year. And how far back does that go? And it's imperative that people really evaluate what their belief systems are, because things are changing all the time. The universal energy works in an upward spiral, and we're being pulled constantly. We get new information constantly. So the decision that you made yesterday might not necessarily be the greatest decision tomorrow, because have new information by tomorrow. And what's fascinating too is that people get stuck in this loop, right? This loop that they know. And mom said that that guys that are 6 feet tall with dark hair and brown eyes, you got to watch out for them. Well, where did that come from, right? So
it came from somebody else's experience.
Exactly. And I am so passionate about what I do, because there's so many health conditions and illnesses that people experience, and people have way more control over their health than they've been led to believe or the system invites. And over 90% of health conditions and illnesses are lifestyle induced. So let's start there, right? Because when people are feeling good, when people are feeling expansive, when they feel that they're, connected with their body, and they're flowing along, those aren't the people that are doing the judgments, that are being so judgmental and are putting people in all the boxes. It's just like, hey, look what I found. Come on over here and see what's going on.
Yeah, there's it. When we're good, that's what I love about the box analogy, is when you get past the box, because there's always something trying to hold us back, and it always uses a grain of truth, so that when we look through the walls, because the box is never solid, there's always cracks. That's what lets light in. That's what lets us see out. And that's why fear weaves a translucent web of lies with that grain of truth, so that when you look out, the translucence blurs everything else except for that grain of truth, with the idea that that grain of truth will draw you back in. But if you see the reality beyond the box, you accept the truth, but you realize that there's so much more.
Well, and that's the beauty of the present moment, and what I call learning to live from the inside out, because that's where your power is. And power doesn't think in terms of boxes, right? That whole power versus force, it is really very interesting, because boxes are more of a circumstantial creation. We've either created it ourselves or somebody else has put us in one, right?
Exactly.
And that's all external. It's all external. That doesn't come from the inside of us, right?
No, the only thing that comes from the inside is the fear, because it knows us better than we know ourselves. So it can draw on our experiences and maybe just hit us with the emotion of something without seeing what it was, what the actual happened, to keep us in the past instead of in the present. Because like you said, when we're in the present moment, then anything is possible. You're not being dragged by the chains of the past. You're ready to fly to the future of opportunities.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah. We need a certain level of fear and understanding what that is, because that's part of what keeps us safe, right? It's the survival part of us, right?
Exactly.
What's fascinating is that most people don't realize that, the tiger isn't coming at us all the time. But we can extrapolate that out, that, the sky's falling, waiting for the other shoe to drop. All of these old, sayings that have come along? Where did these things come from, right? But it kind of perpetuates it, right? And people talk about that. And it's misery loves company, right? That's another thing.
Yeah.
People love to commiserate, and that just exacerbates the whole thing. And if everybody knew that the research shows that the actual lifespan of an emotion is 90 seconds or less, you can learn a lot in 90 seconds. Okay, there isn't that fast car coming. I'm safe to cross the street now, right? And you can kind of use that example moving on. We do get fearful thoughts that come in, but we make it up. It's something that's actually fabricated, a lot of these fears. And if we understood that all, our thoughts and our emotions invite these chemical cocktail reactions in our body, and the body gets used to that too. And so if you're used to being a curmudgeon and all of a sudden you think you're going to be, light on your feet and a dancer having fun, your body's saying, you can't do that. What about my chemical cocktail here? Right?
Exactly.
And it's a very simplistic, way of describing it. But, we don't need to know everything. We don't need to know all of the chemistry. We don't need to know all of the biology. We don't need to know all of that. And what's fascinating is that we have so much more opportunities if we understand also. I love to talk to everybody about, the emotional energetic scale, because we are light beings, we're energy beings. Everything has an energetic value to it. Every thought, every emotion, every action, every function. And when you're down in the lower vibrations of blame and judgment and disappointment and discontent, you're not going to get what you want living down there. And the law of attraction is alive and well. It's a sub-law of the law of vibration. It's always in play. And so if you want to find somebody who's disappointed too, you'll be sure to find that. And so, it's like that Confucius saying, if you think you can, you can't. And if you think you can't, you can't. And, our outlook is somewhat like that too, because if we're up in the higher vibrations of curiosity and exploration and gratitude has a beautiful high vibration, which is right up there with the abundance of the good stuff. And so let's learn to live there. It's not easy to make that big jump, and it doesn't typically happen that way. But if you can visualize that emotional scale and, okay, what's the next best thought I can use to move me up a little bit? And it's always a process. And, we get up there and then something happens and we're kind of, pulled down for whatever reason. But still, that's still circumstantial. And we do have the ability and the opportunity to get back up there.
Well, and you talk about law of attraction and vibration. And those are two things that over this year, I'm becoming more familiar with, partly because of the vision board work I can now do. So that's something that's not only in my workshop tool belt, and doing a vision board in this approach, it's very much intentional.
Yeah.
It's a 6-hour process, not just a girls' night collage making event with wine.
Yeah.
It's being intentional, because the whole idea is to attract you want where you want to go, which is where you belong. And then the vibration, like you said, this is where you start seeing people, and that's probably part of how it's like for us. It's, yeah, I want to talk to that person. I haven't gotten there yet, but there's just something about your vibration. It's like, I need that time to talk. We've got to find the time. And then it just worked out this way.
I know, right? And so what's fascinating is that it's very much about an allowance. And the vision board is great because it gives you a visual. And if you can sensorize that, not only visually, because people operate, some people are more tactile, some people are more visual, some people are more, into the auditory. And if you can sensorize your vision, right, it's imperative to have a vision, because otherwise, what intentionally are you working towards each day, right? But it's also very much about an allowance of allowing that to come to you, because when you are vibrational match to that, it's a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And going after is kind of a force, but it's not power, right? It's more circumstantial. And the allowance, and people often have a difficult time with the word surrender because they think it's a weakness, but it's really an allowance of like, okay, I understand more about the vibration now. I understand a little bit more about the universal laws and the energy principles, which I am a part of. We're all a part of nature, right? And so everything is always in motion. So if I can play in the game that I'm a part of, instead of some game that somebody else has made up with their expectations for me, like, and they put me in a box, right? It's just, it's a whole different way of living.
Yeah. And just on the vision board, you're so right on that ability to add the senses to it. Because a picture is a picture. But when you can see, like if I look at my vision board, I see myself speaking on stage. Mm-hmm. So it's seeing me on the stage, walking up to the stage, what I'm wearing, how it feels, the energy of the crowd, the stage under my feet, if there's a video or not, mm-hmm. all of that stuff, having that feeling is what makes it more real.
Oh, absolutely. And going beyond that, right? Because I think it's fabulous to go out a ways. And I like when I work with people envisioning and getting to that, I ask them to look 3 years out, right? Because the mind doesn't really have the capability of predicting that far ahead, so it doesn't argue with you, right? And then you reverse engineer it and you have these milestones, right? And one for you is speaking on the stage. And what does it feel like? And absolutely, what are you wearing? And what did you have for breakfast that day? And oh gosh, where are you going for dinner afterwards, right? And so, and then the next engagement, and where in the world will that be? And what's traveling, who's with you, all of these things that surround us, we create our own environments. And so we have the ability to do that. And I think it's important to, nothing is a straight trajectory. I mean, even that arrow that's going for the bullseye is wavering. There's course correction constantly. And that's why it's important to be intentional to keep you on course.
Well, yeah, that arrow had to kind of go up before it could ever hit the target where it's supposed to. Exactly. Otherwise, it's in the dirt.
Right. But, absolutely.
But even as you talk about that, I will even add some of the meditation to the vision board, the visualizing, because I've had some of those meditation experiences where this was part of the meditation goal, is to see something in the future and feel it. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that it's like, I've seen myself through those on the stage. I know exactly what dress I was wearing. It's upstairs. It's like I saw it on Amazon. I bought it. Haven't worn it yet, but it's waiting.
Yeah.
So there's so many ways to visualize, and that's another piece of visualizing, even is the meditation process.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's also really useful when you think about, because nothing happens without imagination, right? And everything has been created from imagination. So we have that ability. And I think it's important to be curious. What are the possibilities, right? Because I just love this work, because I was talking with a client yesterday and I said something to her and she goes, I never thought of that before. Right. And so when you can spark somebody to open up their imagination a little bit, wow, then we're off to the races. Right.
Oh
And
yeah.
and that's why I think it's so important to have these conversations and to work with other people and to go, oh my gosh, perspective. I think there are about as many perspectives on the planet as there are people. So you're going to learn something from everybody, whether you're going to actually use what you learned, or the learning might be, oh no, thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah. But you're going to learn something if you're listening.
And you're 8 billion people. There is no two alike, because nobody has the same experience. Right. Even twins who grow up together,
Mm-hmm.
they may be 99% the same in some cases, but they will never be 100%, because their experiences is still their own.
Well,
Not
and that's the fun of epigenetics. And I'm just beginning to learn more and more about epigenetics and how our reaction to our experience in our environment is actually what signals the genes. And that's why those, and it will either upregulate the gene or downregulate it. It will actually spark it to take off and create something fabulous, or create a disease or a condition or whatnot. But it's our interpretation to our environment is what influences the genes to operate the way they do. So that's while you're talking about the two twins are not going to be the same, they have the same genetic makeup, but they're being influenced differently by the different perceptions.
exactly. Even as simple as they're in different classes. That right there means their experience will be different, even if
Right.
they come together and talk about it.
Yeah.
Talking about it's not the same as doing.
Oh, no question. And I think that that's a really important point, because you can visualize, you can have a vision board, you can, see it in your mind, but if you're not taking actions to move you forward in that direction, right, nothing's going to happen.
Exactly. So when you talk about the epigenetics, and I was trying to remember, you had the neuroscience, the metacognition, and the epigenetics. So I'm kind of curious what, in terms of how you use these and work with them, what each of them is, just a little bit.
I like to simplify everything. And so I bring it down to perception, the ultimate mind diet, what you choose to think, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how your mind operates. What's fascinating is in our brainstem, we have what's known as the RAS, the reticular activating system. And I like to think of it as a very simplified version is thinking of it as a synthesizer. And so what you're choosing to focus on, think of a scavenger hunt, okay? And when you're thinking about, oh, okay, on my list, the red balloon, okay. I'm thinking about the red balloon. This information comes down through my RAS, and this is also influencing what I'm focusing on because I'm always on the lookout. I'm on the scavenger hunt, but it's also kind of a combination of, that game of go fish. Okay. In my mind is the red balloon, and I'm always on the lookout for the match, right? My mission is to find the match to this red balloon. And so that becomes the focus. And you might not even see this fabulous, red Ferrari over here, because that's not a red balloon, right?
Right.
It could be bright yellow and just across the street, and you wouldn't even see it, because you're so focused on it. And that's the beauty of focus, but it's also a detriment to be hyper focused and not to be open to what's going on around us, right? So people talk about balance of things, but balance is always in flux. If you think of a balance scale, it's always in motion. And just as an aside, being off the track of this a little bit, people talk about finding the balance of life. Balance yesterday isn't going to be the same as the balance today, right? Because things are always in motion and everything fluctuates. So your life satisfaction scale of today is going to be different than possibly it is tomorrow, unless you are on the lookout for opportunity and things that you can use, right? And not so much these material things, but it's just like, oh my gosh, what can I learn today that's going to open me up to get me going in the direction that I want to go? What skill do I have to develop to really help me move forward? And so I really believe the ultimate mind diet, what you choose to think, what you choose to entertain in your thought process dictates your emotions. And you have, now that you know that the lifespan of an emotion is 90 seconds or less, you don't have to be feeling tomorrow the same way you might have been feeling this morning, right?
Right.
Because we do have the opportunity to go, oh, okay, I can do better, right? I can make an improvement because I have the choice. I can make a choice. I can't change that thing over there, but what can I do to move me forward that isn't going to keep holding me up and keep me from, and keep me in that box, right? And so I think that a combination of all of these things, and also understanding that we do influence our genetic reaction by what we think, what we do, those chemical cocktail reactions, and are basically how we choose to live. And there are times in life when we feel that we don't have a lot of choice because maybe we're not old enough and we have parental influence that is not optimum, or we have, an employer that we're not excited about, or, oh, I can't believe I have to go to this job every day. Okay. Well, if you continue to think that, you're going to be in that same job in about a year or however long. If you can look for the opportunity to make a change in how you look at it. I love, this quote of Wayne Dyer's: when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And that's very true, because there are different energetic values as to how you're looking at it. So even though when we feel that we're in impossible situations, there's always an opportunity in everything. And if we can just get a little glimmer of that, it's just like, oh, okay, be a little curious about it, and also examine your own beliefs as you're going along. All right, what's my belief that's holding me back?
Well, and we have a lot of beliefs that hold us back. and some of them we don't even know that we have until it happens.
Oh, I know. And it's just like, whoa, where'd you come from?
Yeah, I ran into that a couple of weeks ago. It was during CJ's summit, but on that Friday, I went to my first in-person event. So since before the pandemic, and it was on a campus where I've got 3 degrees. And I walked in there, and Sandra Gonzalez always talks about sexy confidence. You go in, you got that sexy confidence, your mindset is ready to go. And that's what I did. And then after I was in, within 5 minutes, and I sat down, it's like I was ready to leave. Now, in the past me would go, I'm just being an introvert. It's just too many people around, whatever. But as I'm walking out, I'm going, okay, why do I feel a need to leave? The event had finished. They were in the networking part, and I'm leaving. And it's like, why is this happening? So the awareness is such an important piece to actually make the changes, to be able to take the first step, because you can't take that step until you let that awareness step in and go, why is this happening? Mm-hmm. And then after a 1 hour texting conversation with CJ that night, it's like, okay, there's a lot of bad energy in this place from my past. Mm. And the minute that I was there, it all came back again. I don't realize how being on a campus, and because of things in my life at that time that were not positive, mm-hmm. every time I went on the campus, it was not a positive experience. I got my degrees, I did well with my coursework, but it wasn't positive. Now I've got that understanding. Mm-hmm. And it will be interesting to see what happens the next time I go onto that campus to do something, because I have this piece of information mm-hmm. that I didn't have before.
And that's going to be so fabulous, because now that you have that understanding, you're going to have a different experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And hopefully, I mean, she was right. I would have done better had she been, or somebody else been there with me versus on my own. But still, it's going to change. But the other thing is, I can take that experience, that understanding of this situation, and keep that in mind, even in similar situations on different places. Mm-hmm.
And that is there. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. It's like, if the history is there, so keep it in mind.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that it's another argument for the mindfulness work. And because the more mindful we become, our energetic value actually goes up, right? And when we're in those higher energies, that's where the opportunities and the possibilities are, right? And also, when we are more aware of how we operate, what it is we want to accomplish, what's my purpose, what's my mission, what's my intention, and to actually have that morning practice and actually write down your intentions to support that decision that you've made, right? And it's not the only decision you're going to make, but when you act more intentionally and live in those higher vibrations, you develop a much greater awareness of your own intuition. And that's highly valuable, right? And so the faster your intuition is going to be coming along and go, hey, remember, when X happened, and you don't have to go back to that, but, that might be influencing you a little bit, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Because the whole idea is to drop the chains of the past so that you can stay in the present. And you talked gratitude at one point, and another piece that is to me is as important is forgiveness. Because when I talk about dropping the chains of the past, that is almost the most important thing to me. To drop the past is forgiveness. And
absolutely.
So many people don't understand it.
Well, because people have, an understanding of forgiveness that isn't actually how forgiveness operates, because forgiveness is not condoning what someone may have done to you, or what someone said, or something that you did, to yourself or to someone else that was detrimental. It's very much about letting that go, giving yourself forgiveness, giving that other person, giving that, letting that go, give them some grace, because that's what opens up the ability and the energy to move forward. Because when you think about how much of blame is going on these days, and all of these things, it's just like, wow, okay, it's pretty obvious that a lot of these things have been going on for how many hundreds of years or decades, or whatever. And it's just like, that's not helping anything. It's like, take a step, drag Bob, take a step, drag Bob. It's just like, it's giving our power away, and it's living in those lower levels of energy that don't serve good purposes. And as I say, it's not condoning what happened in the past, but it's just like freeing and allowing people to move forward.
Exactly. When we, and the other piece of it is, you don't have to forgive. You don't have to tell somebody that you forgive them.
No.
Because the reality is, I know this from my own experience, if I were to say, I forgive you for this, to my dad for some stuff, he'd just look at me and go, I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
Like, don't look at me. I didn't do anything wrong. And then it blows up in your face, essentially. But when those moments happen, when somebody just hits you sideways, and it's really hard. But if you understand the importance of forgiveness, and that if you can forgive them within a day or less, a day or two, the healing process will shorten.
Oh, absolutely. And when you can think of it, I love thinking about things in terms of energy, because it takes so much of the sting and the emotional judgment out of things, right? And so when you can think of that on an energetic level, and from his perspective, he's like, what are you talking about? And from your perspective, you feel wronged, you're not happy with what had happened, and think of all the time and energy that you have spent on thinking that, where he has no inkling of what you're even referring to. And so, and then that perspective thing is so important, because people, it's crazy, isn't it, what we do to ourselves? And a lot of that is because of the way we were programmed growing up, and that's what, people do what they know. And that's why I'm loving this conversation, and similar conversations that we each have with other people, because it's important to understand a little bit more about how we operate and what the possibilities are, and the beauty of living in those higher vibrations, and not giving our power away to other people that don't even realize that they're sapping our energy. But we've just been giving it away, right?
or reclaiming that energy, because I can think about my dad, and I think about my story, and the event where everything went sideways at the age of 7. And that's, for a half century, that's what had me going sideways. I never really recovered until something happened about 3 years ago. Once that happened, and then I'm saying, okay, I'm where I'm supposed to be. One of the first things to do, to drop the chain that's still trying to drag back into all the pain and fear and everything else that happened from that day forward, is to forgive, to go, that's who he was. I know how he grew up, accept what happens. That doesn't mean that he was right. It's just he's doing what he thought best.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the thing with parents. So many of them, it's like they're doing what they think is best.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can get to the point to forgive, it helps to at least heal us. It may never heal the relationship, but at least heals us. And if we're healed, then we can go forward and do what we're meant to do.
Mm-hmm. Yep. People do what they know. And you just love it when people kind of start to wake up a little bit and say, yeah, I want to learn more, right?
Well, I see CJ's got a question for you.
Also taking the high road. I've done it both ways. And I would say that taking the high road isn't always the easiest, but it's the most rewarding, and it's the most energetically expeditious way to do it, I believe. I won't get into all the gory details, but I've had a couple of situations where it's just like, wow, okay. I think that they really just were doing what they knew. And most people do, in regard to my parents. I grew up in a situation that wasn't very happy. And that would be an understatement, I think. But they were doing the best they knew how.
Right.
And like what you were saying, Susanna, about understanding how they grew up and all of the circumstances and experiences that led to them at that point. They were doing the best that they knew how and doing what they knew. And I grew up as a very angry kid, and I was probably the most elegant bully you've ever seen, right? Probably I played center forward on the soccer team. If I could mow you over in any part of life, I'd be happy to do it, right? And so, but yeah, so through learning and then through experiences later, I'm a big fan of the high road. I also believe in standing up for yourself in the most elegant way that you can.
I like that. Mm-hmm. Having that elegant way, because it's, for many of us, it's still painful to try and stand up, and then to understand that when you stand up for yourself, it might get ugly the first few times, mm-hmm. but you have to just be aware of you're doing what you're supposed to do for you.
Yeah.
And the more you do it, the easier it will get. And then when you talk about the past and the time, it's there's how people grew up, and then we grew up in a different time as well.
Oh yeah.
So for me, it was the 70s was when I was growing up. That's when I was in elementary and middle school. The society, especially if you're in northern New England, is a whole different deal than maybe what you're seeing on the news. Or so it's just understanding where everybody came from.
Mm-hmm. It does make a difference. I lived a long time in upstate New York, and that's a different environment than obviously in living in New York City. And growing up, all I heard was, oh, those damn New Yorkers. And then when I moved to New York, I'm like, I guess I'm a damn New Yorker. But I love New York City. I'm in Philadelphia right now. I love where I have chosen to live here for right now because it's very diverse. I love hearing different languages. I love the different energy of different environments, different people. And what I learned when I moved to New York City, I found them to be the least judgmental group of people I had ever lived amongst. Yeah,
and I'm finding that where I'm at too. the place where I'm at right now, it's becoming more diverse
Mhm.
than what it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whenever I moved into this area.
Uh-huh.
And it's nice to see that diversity. It's nice to see different people. I mean, I've been overseas, so I understand diversity,
Mhm. Yeah.
uh, and what it's like. And I've been in China, so I've seen the reverse discrimination.
Mhm.
And it's nice when you can be someplace here and everything just, you watch it naturally grow.
Mhm. Yep.
And the funny thing is, we have snuck up to an hour here.
I know, isn't that something?
It's
I'm
like, how did that
delighted
happen?
to have spent the time with you. Thank you.
Oh, and I would love for you to kind of have the closing thoughts of whatever you might want to leave as what you want to do as a golden nugget, a thought, whatever, as a way to kind of close things up.
Oh, I would just encourage everybody to think about many aspects of their lives from an energetic level and learning to work with the mechanics of living, right? It's the mechanics and the physics that we can move forward with, I think, at a much more exponential rate, because it does take a lot of that. Take this, take a step, drag Bob out of it, and bringing the past along with us, and because it's such an interference, right? And so, yeah, be intentional, be focused, have fun.
Exactly. I love it. And I'm so glad that you were here today. It's a great opportunity to meet. I love talking with you. I loved everybody who's commented and the engagement from everybody. And that's going to wrap up this
Okay.
week for From Boxes to Butterflies. And
I
I look
love.
forward to seeing everybody next week when I have somebody else.
Oh, good.
It's going to be a great conversation. It turned out that October and November, pretty much everybody that is here, they were part of the summit. So everybody was part of CJ's Recharge and In Charge Global Summit.
Mhm.
So
And how
that's
fun is
been a
that,
beautiful
right?
thing. I
Yeah.
know. It's just the energy from everybody has been wonderful. So with that, I'm going to say thank you, everybody, for being here. And I'm going to close it down now, and we'll talk in a week. Thank you.